either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Weird MicroViews. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
Or the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast MicroViews. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
And we get to do my MicroView pick for the Good bingo card, and I decided to do something that's a little outside of my nature to choose.
Yes, I was surprised when you picked this, but pleased.
I decided to go with my idol of being an uncle, Uncle Buck.
Uncle Buck is a classical comedy that I was not expecting you to pick.
No, I wasn't either, but it was just one of those ones where it's like, you know what? All the other good stuff that I want to cover deserve a little bit of a deep dive, and as much as I love Uncle Buck, there's not a lot to 100% deep dive on.
Not really, and don't get me wrong, I also love Uncle Buck, and I love watching John Candy perform, but yeah, there's just not like a lot as far as like the writing, the producing of it, even just the set itself. Like, yeah, it's cool, but it can be summed up so quickly, unfortunately. It just is a good movie, just not with a lot of substance to it.
Yeah. So those unfamiliar, Uncle Buck is written and directed by John Hughes, starring John Candy as Buck Russell, Macaulay Culkin as Miles Russell, Jean Louise Kelly as Tia Russell, and Gabby Hoffman as Maisie Russell. And if you haven't guessed by this point, with all the same last names, this is a family movie in that regard too. But it's about a trio of kids who, when their mom's dad has a heart attack, the only person that they can rely on is their estranged Uncle Buck,
who is a heavy drinker, a heavy smoker, and his job is just to bet on rigged horse races.
Just crass all around.
It's John Candy, and it's some of the best John Candy, too. Like, I know some people believe that Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is his best work. I kind of disagree. I feel like Uncle Buck really puts the nail in the head for me.
Yeah, and I actually hadn't seen this movie until, I want to say 2 years ago at the earliest, because it just wasn't one I grew up with, but then my buddy Actuality told me about this one, and I'm like, you know what? If you're recommending it, I'll give it a go, and I absolutely love this. And it's one of those movies where, I mean, we talk about how well John Hughes just writes in general for just a basic story.
Very true.
In this one, we have good sibling dialogue right away. I mean, we get a setting up of the family issues with a couple lines, and it's just good writing for kids with them repeating what they've heard here and there throughout without, like, fully going into the adult. It's adult humor because the kids don't know what they're saying.
Yes.
But it's also, like, you can watch it with a child, and the child's not going to get what that kid's saying.
Oh, for sure. This is definitely an adult comedy, but none of the jokes that anyone makes are going to be in the kids' lexicon, so, like, they're gonna have a good time because, again, Macaulay Culkin, this is one of his child classics, and he's a stellar kid in this. He's always funny, his lines are well done, and everyone else acts really well, too. The sibling dialogue is really well done.
And if you'll remember from our Home Alone episode in December, this is what got him into Home Alone. So
yes, it was.
This is before he really, really made it as Macaulay Culkin.
And for those of you on TikTok, this is the movie where the sound that's been going around for ages where do you work? In the city. Do you live there? Yes. Do you have a home? No. Why not? This is that movie, and the whole movie is like that. It's just stellar line after stellar line, but it's wrapped up in a really nice and sweet story.
I think part of that is he's able to get the entire movie set up real quick, and that's all his movies is like within the first 10-15 minutes for 15 minutes of the movie, you already know what's going to happen. I mean, we get the setup of the absentee father and mother, and just a bit out of their child's lives. I mean, this is the 80s latchkey generation, but it also is setting up these kids needing to have a fatherly or parental figure around them, as well as paralleling family issues between the two dinners with Uncle Buck and his significant other, Chinese Kobolowski, and his lack of desire to have a family, him running away from it, but being forced into basically being the parental figure that the kids need, and the kids being the push he needs to move on and not be such a man-child the rest of his life.
Oh, most definitely. And while the base story plot is a pretty standard 80s to 90s sitcom-styled writing, John Candy's performance really sets this movie apart. no one else possibly could have played this with his level of care, fatherliness, but balanced out with someone who just is really abusing the alcohol, the cigarettes, and just kind of being like kind of very juvenile, even though he's the man in charge now.
Yeah, he portrays that character who's rough around the edges, the quote unquote true bachelor, where
it's perfect.
Yeah, well, and at the start, he's even more absentee than the parents. I mean, he doesn't know the nephews and nieces' names by heart. I mean, he's overshares constantly about things that they don't need to be hearing about. But that at the same time is like, he ends up becoming, because he is slightly involved in their life, and because he's like, okay, your parents have told me to do this, I'm going to do this to the best of my ability, where he's supportive, protective, but just goofy enough, and acts crazy when he needs to, and also the only person that I know currently who makes a fedora look cool.
I'm glad you said that, because yes, this man drives the worst beater car on the planet, to the point where he knows when it's going to backfire and scare all the school children. All of his clothes look like they've been like the same shirt for like a week straight would be his norm, but now he has a wash machine he can use regularly. And
not even that, like, doesn't even know how to use the dryer either, so he has to microwave all his clothes.
Exactly. But in the same, like, he's incompetent at being an adult, but at the same time he clearly cares a ton about these kids after a while. He's out here making the giantest pancake known to man just for the kid's birthday. Yeah, well,
in a way, his maturing also parallels Tia's coming of age story, where it's the way he made this movie is there's that kind of duality going back and forth, where Tia has attitude the entire time, whereas Miles and Maisie. Well, Maisie doesn't have much to the movie. She's very sweet from the get-go.
Yeah, she's 6-ish in the movie.
And Miles attaches to him as a strong male role model.
Yeah. Maybe for the worse. But I do like the duality between him trying to become an adult and her being a teenager trying to learn to be an adult. The two of them have such a great sassiness that just battles the whole way through. John manages to play such a great role model character where he is saying and doing stuff that in a real life scenario you'd be like, I really hope you don't threaten people with hatchets. But we also know a guy who, like, he means well, he means to protect her well, and yet we don't want to threaten people this way in real life. But it's a great skit.
But that's the thing too, is like, even though he is a man-child for most of the movie, he has seen enough of the world, because he's lived on the less than ideal side of society.
He's been the less than ideal society for a while. Yeah.
And so that's why he's like, okay, I want to protect these kids for as long as they can, even though, like, I'm not going to be in their life potentially long. At least at the beginning, is like, there's no future potential. So it does really well with making it feel like he's butting into her life where he doesn't really belong, until the end, when she's like, okay, yeah, you were right. You were just trying to do the right thing, but you were nosy about it.
Yeah, definitely.
And like, when she does get her quote unquote revenge and messes with his life, that really does, I think that's a good shift in the movie, where he's realizing that, maybe it's that little push he needs to be like, okay, how fragile his relationship with his significant or Janice's relationship is that, okay, this is the one thing that's going to push it over.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's the other thing, too, that's with this movie, is that it's got heart, despite how comedic it is, and even then, the comedy is a little dry.
It is a little dry.
But I will say that there are some slapstick times that I don't think work 100% with the movie, like when he gets hit with the door towards the end. Like, there's just a couple odd little comedic choices chosen that, like, well, I get it. It just doesn't, for me, mesh with the rest of the writing with the movie.
Yeah, and I think part of that is because while John Candy is clearly the perfect man for the role, he was not the original man for the role.
Really?
No, there was a couple others who were picked who have a similar style of humor to him, but usually lean a little bit more into the slapstick or physical humor. Not a lot, but again, a lot of dry humor, a lot of dad/weird uncle humor.
Okay.
And John Candy... Unfortunately, the other two main guys who were up for the running, from what I've read, were either not interested or were engaged. And John Candy ended up taking the role, which is perfect, because John Candy, like, now that you see it, you cannot see anyone other than him as Uncle Buck, for sure. But yeah, he was not the original one, and so you can see that, I think, in some of the writing. he did help go back and forth with the director from the interviews I've listened to from other remaining casts who talk about their time working with John. Because unfortunately, John passed away not terribly long after this movie came out. I think it was only 4 or 5 years afterwards that he passed. So for a lot of people, they remember working with him very fondly and how willing he was to help work on the dialogue and the comedy between him and the kids to help make it really fluid. But you can still see some of those, like, spots where it feels a little awkward just because it's John.
Well, and maybe it's like, okay, this might work as an editing bit, or this will make it just funnier. And just for me, like, as a kid I probably would have liked it, but as an adult it's a little out of place. But that's the other thing too, is like Uncle Buck for the most part is this he is a larger than life kind of misfit uncle where
for sure.
A lot of what he does is just a little over the top, but because it doesn't go too far, it still feels believable that, okay, of course this guy's gonna go to this party to save his niece, drill a hole in the door, and then come through like it's a horror film, which great moments of the movie. And that's the thing too, is like there's all these little bits that Hughes puts into this movie that starts to build up and gets used later on. Like putting the dilemma of, okay, well, Uncle Buck really likes the betting on the dog races and all this other stuff that he wants to do. And that's how he makes his money, but he ends up having to put his priorities aside for the betterment of the people around him. And there's those big moments too, especially where like he gets to the racetrack and he's got the kids in the car, and it's that do or die moment of like, am I gonna be the good uncle, or am I taking these kids to this racetrack? Even though he took them to a bowling alley that's
also a gambling hall, kind of.
It's a little seedy with the people that he hangs around with that he knows at the alley.
Yeah.
But he's still taking these kids to these things that...
And, like, on paper, like, taking your niece and nephews to, like, the bowling alley sounds great. And then it's like, yeah, it was the seedy bowling alley with a bunch of the drunkards that hang out there.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like, okay, well, a little less cool, but... And I think the other thing that makes Uncle Buck work, and especially for me, I struggle a lot with especially 80s and 90s humor that relied really heavily on, like, the uncomfortableness or awkwardness of a character. Uncle Buck is never awkward. He knows intentionally. In fact, one of the characters even talks about how, like, you're embarrassing me. Haven't you ever been embarrassed? He's like, no. No, I have not.
Because that's the thing, is it is a situational embarrassment, but it's not Uncle Buck that's Uncle Buck is the joke, but he doesn't see himself as it. So we're able to tell that, okay, everyone else around him's uncomfortable, except for like when that lady comes to dance with him. You can tell he's like, I'm not super into this. Yeah. But that's the only time where it's like, okay, she's the joke to him, but everyone else is.
And I think part of the other reason why, especially, and like John Candy is a master at this, is he manages to deliver everything with a confidence that, like, the jokes are his wittiness and the props around him, like the car, or the situation of taking the kids to the bowling alley and trying to teach these kids how to bowl. But he's not the only one who is a bit of a jokester. Some of the side characters will have a good funny line or a funny act, but the kids have great, hilarious lines, especially Macaulay Culkin, who, even from a young age, was really good at delivering a solid stare and a quick line.
Steals the show whenever he has his, like, little bits here and there.
Absolutely, and I think it's that balancing of a character that makes Uncle Buck stand out as a comedy, because honestly, there's quite a lot of 80s and early 90s comedies that are similar-ish to Uncle Buck, but honestly don't stick in my memory as much as this one does. And I think it's these side characters that help brace up Uncle Buck into this, like, bigger-than-life character.
Yeah, I can't speak too much from experience because comedy is not my strong suit, so I haven't seen a lot of that from this era unless it was like family friendly or I grew up watching it.
Sure.
But it is one of those movies where when you do see it, it sticks with you. And I think again, it goes back to that while it's comedic, it has that heart to it of like, we all know that person who's been single or been not exactly the best partner in relationships and like,
the little bit extra weird uncle who legends are made of sort of situation.
Exactly. So it builds that up without putting it too far into the realm of non-believability. Like you said, it's the little things like his car backfiring. Yeah. That warns the kids that he's coming.
His goofy damn hat.
Yeah, he goes to the principal's office to deal with the principal, like to saying, Well, she's 8 years old. She needs to be taking her studies more seriously. And he's like,
She's eight.
Exactly.
She's 8.
Like, I don't have any of this, and look at me. I'm actually pretty happy. Outside of, like, this one aspect of my life, I've been living the best life I want to live. And, like, even when we see his apartment is a sty.
Yeah.
But
it's his.
Yeah, exactly. It sets him apart from the rest of the family. And I do like how Hughes also sets up that he has the opportunity to grow at the very beginning with going to his significant other's mechanic shop and working for her, and there's that little bit of I think part of what it is, without being blatant about it, is it's this. I don't know how prevalent it is nowadays. I think the idea is changing a little bit more. Sure, is that he's a little worried about working for his wife, basically, who's he could see as his wife.
And he seems like the kind of guy, he wants to be independent in every way. He wants to have his own apartment. He wants to have his own, schedule. He wants to have his own job. And unfortunately, his job is just not a real job.
He bounces around as long as he can pay the bills.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is like, he's given that opportunity to advance, but he runs away at the earliest opportunity. And it's only through children that he realizes, okay, I can't be this man-child anymore.
Yeah.
So it's this kind of nice little back and forth of, he realizes that he needs the family and the kids to advance him in life, and then the kids needed him to ground themselves, more so Tia than the other two, but have someone who knows the other side of the world.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, no, it's just one of those ones where I wish Uncle Buck was talked about more, because like there's a few people that I know that I've talked to is like, okay, have you seen Uncle Buck? Most people I know our age haven't seen it, or
they haven't seen it in a long time,
or they absolutely love it and it's one of their favorites.
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, I feel like John Candy is one of those actors who, especially now, I think a lot of people would find most of his works hilarious. It's just, unfortunately, a lot of them are they're very 80s. Like his work ended so soon after like he was really popular that I think a lot of people, unfortunately, especially our generation, you either grew up with him and are a big fan, or you missed out entirely. He has a bunch of really good ones, and a lot of them are similar in the humor and styling. So, like, if you like Uncle Buck, there's a long list of other things you could be doing.
Yeah, I mean, as a writer, John Candy's done a lot.
I mean, and again, some in a lot of similar humor. Though I would say most have a little bit more slapstick. But a lot of them are very similar in style, where it's a lot of situational funny, it's a lot of spatial funny, it's a lot of family funny.
Yeah, and I think it just gets overshadowed by, I wouldn't really call them cult classics, but the more widespread, highly acclaimed films that he's done, such as like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I feel that's overshadowed most of his other work, unfortunately, as specifically as a director.
I would agree, and I know people still talk about The Babysitter or The Breakfast Club and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, both solid choices, but Uncle Buck is right up there with them, and I'm kind of sad that it's not as well talked about.
Yeah, well, and looking at his directorial filmography, I mean, his first 4 movies are like coming of age high school stories: 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and then he switches over to still more family friendly, but more geared towards like the appearance of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. She's having a baby, Uncle Buck, and then Curly Sue, which I haven't seen, but that I'm sure that one's more kiddish. But it's that thing is like, you have that one movie that overshadows everything else. And honestly, I know this is going to piss off a bunch of people. I'm not a fan of Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
I like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but I think, especially as I am now an adult and I'm no longer in the seat of the kid or the high school kid who is trying to make the shenanigans work, I enjoy his movies that are more adult focused, like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Uncle Buck. I think I like them better because I relate to the adult characters now.
Well, and also, like, we travel quite a bit more for Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
And there's a lot of details. I get it. Like, just from a set design, it is more impressive. From a dialogue spot, there is a lot more happening. Uncle Buck, though, is still very cool and very impressive. Unfortunately, there's just not as much, like, fun facts to be had about it.
Well, I think there's also where people grew up with this, so, like...
Oh, for sure.
Breakfast Club and 16 Candles, Weird Science, I know for a lot of people our age, they saw them when they were coming of age, and so they're like, okay, this is what I relate to. And I didn't see most of these until I was an adult. I think the only movie of John Hughes I had seen before I graduated directorial scene.
Yeah.
Before I graduated high school was Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I had seen parts of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yeah.
I'd seen parts of Weird Science, Breakfast Club, and 16 Candles, but I'd never seen any of them all the way through until I was much, much older than... Even though, like, don't get me wrong, the writing's still great.
It is.
I can understand the relatability. It just, I didn't connect to them because
they're meant for high school kids, especially like his first two. Yeah, no, I think that's why for me Uncle Buck still shines much higher than the rest. Is Uncle Buck? I now resonate with Uncle Buck and the parents much more but there is room for you to resonate with the kids of both, like the elementary school age kids, or I guess 6-year-old in Maisie's case, and then the high school with Tia.
Yeah. So, Chris, would you let Uncle Buck babysit the hypothetical children?
End of movie, Uncle Buck could. Beginning of movie, Uncle Buck, I don't know. But honestly, this movie is so good. If you haven't seen it, it is, honestly, it's pretty high on my recommendation list. It is genuinely funny. It is very easy to watch. And if you have the ability to watch it on VHS tape like I do, because I own a bunch of John Candy stuff on VHS tape, it really does add a little bit of magic to it.
Yeah.
So
there's always that little nostalgia with old cinema, and especially like the physical medium. I mean, I know there's a more video game side, but I know there's someone who set up a VR thing where like you actually plug in like your PlayStation, like put it in the disc and everything.
Fun.
And like, yeah. I definitely agree with that. And even though, like, I've talked about how the other John Hughes movies have not as much staying power for me, I think Uncle Buck is one of those ones that is, I don't want to say it's timeless, because it definitely is of its era too.
It's so incredibly 80s.
But the core of it, I think, is what makes it timeless. Is
the character Uncle Buck is undoubtedly timeless, because I have my own version of Uncle Buck and I love him dearly.
Yeah, coming together as a family. I mean, it makes me think of like how Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I was talking with, I forget who I was telling this to. I was on my brother's bachelor party and this was brought up. But Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is technically a Thanksgiving movie, but it is also technically one. But it also feels Christmassy, and that's the thing. It's
because of the traveling.
Well, not 100%. It's the setting of like winter and stuff too. But that's where like Uncle Buck, like for a little bit, I thought it was like going to be a Thanksgiving movie or like a holiday movie, but it's not. It's one of those ones where it's
just ambiguously school season,
but it also feels like it could be a holiday movie of like,
yes.
I think it's that getting the family together that we talk about of what makes a Christmas movie. I think that also ties into Thanksgiving.
For sure.
But Christmas ends up being the bigger emphasis on this. And this feels more spring than it does.
Oh yeah, and I also think it's just the golden combo of John Hughes writing and directing, John Candy's humor, and Macaulay Culkin's face. Mm-hmm. Honestly, like, those three have been in enough stuff that I watch every Thanksgiving and Christmas that even though Uncle Buck is not technically a specific season, it feels like it fits in.
Yeah. No, I think that's the staying power of it, is that...
For sure.
It's that ambiguous time frame of, like, just...
Yes.
It could fit, hell, it could even fit in with Easter, too.
Yeah, and even though it is painfully 80s, as all John Hughes movies are, it's not so much so that I don't think this movie will suddenly become weird or totally dated in a few more years when nobody really, like, can relate with the 80s. It's mostly just in fashion and a couple home appliances, and honestly, the family in this movie is very well off and has some pretty advanced stuff that even nowadays I'm kind of jealous of their big old griddle.
Yeah, a griddle that's able to be put on your center island in a kitchen.
Is very cool. So cool. Yeah, no, like, this movie is 80s, but it's not so 80s that it feels like a timepiece or something that's, like, a bit painful to watch or, like, almost like a study piece to watch. It blends so wonderfully. And again, John Candy's one of my favorite comedians as far as funny TV and movies go. So I always have a good time.
Yeah. So, Chris, rent, buy, stream, or recline that we ever watched Uncle Buck despite having an audio recording of us watching it.
Uncle Buck is good enough that I would buy it. This is a solid one. I would watch this just about any time of the year because it doesn't seem to really fit in at any point, like we talked about. It is genuinely funny, and I didn't bring it back to you because my husband wants to watch it himself.
As he should.
He loves this movie, and he was kind of bummed he didn't get to watch it with me.
Yeah, I am in the same camp. I'm 100% go buy it if you haven't seen it. I mean, it's streaming on quite a bit now, but if that ever falls apart, definitely go buy it.
Yeah.
And like I said, as much as I like and how much people talk about John Hughes' other works, I would rather watch Uncle Buck over most of those. The only one that I would maybe say I'd rather watch over Uncle Buck is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Which is also a fantastic John Candy piece.
Yeah. Albeit, I do have to admit, I also haven't seen Weird Science where she's having a baby, but I know enough about them that I should go and give them a watch, at least to give a definitive
I think
list.
you will enjoy, but I think Uncle Buck will be your staying power for sure.
Yeah, no, 100%. But we do continue our family-friendly tour of movies finally with Chris's bad pick.
Only the best for you.
Yeah, I'm already a little pissy over this one, and I feel you chose it just to torture me like I tortured you with Miike last year, even though you liked most of Miike outside of Ichi. Bits of Ichi.
I do like most Miike things, but I have watched maybe 10% of that man's discography, so...
Yeah, well, unfortunately, a good chunk of it we can't get a hold of. So.
You know what? That's a problem for the future me.
Yep. But... Anywho, this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Weird MicroViews.
Thanks for listening.
Peace! Thank you for stopping by this here town of the Good, the Bad, and the Weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at the Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always, check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace!